Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dana, an intuitive astrologer, and today we are diving into the Aries new moon solar eclipse that's happening on April 8th, 2024. So we are just a few days away from this eclipse. We are building in to this energy. I think we can all agree on this past week has been rather intense. The energetic component has been quite activating. Many of us are feeling just something escalating inside of us. There's there's an intensity building, right? This is Aries energy, and eclipses are accelerated passages in our lives. They happen every 6 months, and eclipses really are considered to be fated events in astrology. And the reason they're considered to be these like fated passages is because all eclipses are connected to the nodes, usually. Every now and then we have an eclipse that's not in the same sign as a node. And I will get into that another time. But we'll just focus today on this total solar eclipse in Aries at 19 degrees. And today the moon is in Pisces, the day that I'm recording this video. So the energy is a little bit softer, and I appreciate it so much just because of how raw, like I think all of us are feeling a little bit raw and like scraped and kind of just we're feeling it, we're kind of going through this eye of the needle. And the word that really has been coming up is emergence, right? It's like all of the 12 zodiac signs are really like archetypes of life experiences, and they all have a life theme. So it's like, wow, Aries really is about coming into the body, like really incarnating uh, from a soul into this physical expression. And if we think of astrology in a sequence of like Aries starting the celestial year and ending with Pisces, or everything kind of dissolves back to spirit, Aries is ruled by Mars. And in esoteric astrology, Mars is basically like slaying the higher self to come into this lower, denser reality and occupy this human body in this earthly experience. So Aries holds that I am presence. I'm here. It's an enlivened energy. It's a fire cardinal sign, and its symbol, which I love the description by Kelly Lee Phipps. Its symbol is an exploding fountain of flames, daring to rush forth and initiate new experience. It's a quick moving sign. It's a fire starter. It really wants to move. It's about movement, taking action, and courageous, like inspired momentum. It's really like the essence of Aries is self-defining and walking a path that is incredibly personal to each one's journey. It's very bold, like Aries energy, it goes first. I once heard a quote about leadership, and leadership is like doesn't necessarily mean you're exceptionally good at something, although it can, but it means you go first. Like you walk steps and you walk a path that hasn't perhaps been walked before. And even if it has by another person, your path and the way that you walk it and the way you make choices and decisions and really like continue to follow your impulse and your instincts, like that journey is going to just still look different, even if someone next to you is doing something similar. So all of us are in this space right now where we are feeling this fire, right? This igniting energy, which is really kind of encouraging us to take action, right? It's all about willpower in Aries. ruled by Mars. Mars is the planet of our assertion, our willpower, our sex drive, how we move about in the world, like how we, like what motivates us, what really gets our blood boiling, what makes us want to take action. Um, and so this is Mars here. So Mars is currently in Pisces, which is an energy of its own, but you know, Mars and Pisces is really the spiritual warrior. It's about, fighting for taking a stand for something that really holds something, taking a stand for something that is close to our heart. Um, I am feeling the effects of Mercury retrograde myself. So communicating and speaking has its challenges during Mercury retrogrades. I fumble over my words too. And everybody during Mercury retrogrades can feel a little bit like disheveled in their mental space, and sometimes just find that it's harder to assemble sentences. It's like, oh, what is the word I'm thinking of? So, anyways, if you're struggling in any way, that is totally a Mercury retrograde theme. Mercury will be retrograde until April 19th, and it began March 21st. So we are going through this eclipse with Mercury retrograde, and you'll notice this entire stellium here is in Aries. So we have a lot of focus and concentration in Aries. This is a lot of energy that wants to spill out of us, that is, it's emerging with force, with it needs somewhere to go. So movement at this time is really important, exercise, water. I'm definitely encouraging people I'm talking with to take magnesium at night. I know our dream space is really active with Mars and Saturn and Pisces. It's really revving up this like subconscious cleanse or purge, especially with Mercury retrograde ruling our cognitive space. But it can really, like, this eclipse is about purging what's in our way, like really kind of like clearing the field and, like burning away what's no longer needed so you can move forward. It's aggressive like that. That's Aries. It's ready to take action and assert one's willpower. And if you aren't in that space, like if you're not really feeling that, that's okay. There's still a lot of Pisces um, influence, right? With Mars and Pisces, there's a lot of influence here that you might feel like I have all this energy, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know my next step. And that's okay, because you might be someone who receives that clarity when Mercury goes direct, because it will go over the last eclipse point. It will go over this eclipse point at 19 degrees. And that might be more towards like end of April. So astrologers will often say, like, don't make big decisions during a Mercury retrograde. You might change your mind. Those are things that I can't, tell you to do or not do. But what I can say as someone who's been studying astrology intensely for years is that during a Mercury retrograde, some people can actually come to a deeper space of clarity because you're being pulled more into the subconscious mind, and you're being shown things and revealed things that you might not have seen prior. So Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, every single year. This year it's all in fire signs. And I'm actually pretty excited about that because I think um, fire sign energy is really great for like creative inspiration. And so on this note of like clarity and momentum and taking action, we can feel pressure like this. There's a lot of pressure to do something different. And I feel we can describe this as like a choice point. It's like, wow, I'm at the beginning of something, the very beginning. Um, and it can feel overwhelming, but thing about Aries, the wisdom in Aries is that you figure it out as you go. It's really about just starting to move, to take the first steps, to kind of do something differently. And the courage builds the more action you take. It's not really something you can plan for. I know like earth signs might actually really struggle with all of this Aries energy because they're just slower to move and a little bit more cautious. But we all have Aries somewhere in our chart. If you pull up your chart right now and you look to where this Aries symbol is, right? The ram horns, that's how I view the Aries symbol. You will see this stellium transiting that part of your chart. And that's what you get to ground into. Like that's your permission slip of like, whoa, I get to lean into this new beginning and it's confronting, right? It's this energy is confronting. What do I do? How do I move forward? Like, this is the hero's journey. Aries reminds us that this part of your chart is where you need to kind of embark on an independent path that really looks different and it really only makes sense for you. Aries is a sign of individuation, so we come from the oneness of the ocean and individuate into the drop, and then we return to the ocean in that energy of Pisces. And so we're kind of like bridging worlds right now with the ruler of this eclipse being in Pisces. We can kind of feel like in a visceral space. Part of us is like ready to charge forward, and the other part of us is like, I don't know if it's time, or I need to think about this some more. I'm feeling resistance. And that's the Mars Saturn component to this eclipse. Mars and Saturn can be very much like stop, go, like gas pedal, brake energy. And that's just kind of like part of it. It can be a little irritating, but if you know that that's just the energy infusing in, you can really accept it and lean into it instead of really resist it. Um, but this Aries energy is helping to clear the air. That's what it does. It's quite strong and impulsive, right? Aries is ruled by a planet that rules our desire nature. And I think people like heavily in spiritual communities can almost look at desires as wrong or dirty or like not what's the word? Not elevated or like not enlightened. Like desire, there's also sayings that desires are um, the reason we suffer. And although that might be somewhat true on one level or from one perspective, Aries reminds us that without desire, there's no will to live. Like the reason we get out of bed in the morning is because there's something catalyzing us to connect into, like whether you're a mother or a father, or you're a teacher, or you need to show up in some way, shape, or form. That's Aries energy. It's showing up. It's like you keep showing up, eventually you're going to be successful, right? So Aries is also about a new experience, and it can be really like rash and impulsive and maybe even a little bit like reckless. And that's part of Aries. I think, like a young Aries sun sign can often get into trouble. It can have, reckless experiences. And I think that's part of being ruled by Mars. And as that Aries energy evolves, um, it's actually going to start answering more to Mercury. So Mercury is a really powerful part of this eclipse because Mercury is the soul level ruler of Aries in esoteric astrology. So I love esoteric astrology, and every sign considers two rulerships, and the rulerships really depict the evolutionary journey that each sign goes through. So if we think about that, considering an Aries sun sign and how it moves according to impulse, right? It's like very body centric, or like there's a lot of body wisdom with Aries, and it doesn't think too much before it just goes. And I actually think that's incredibly admirable. But as Aries grows and matures and evolves, Mercury comes in and becomes a very important kind of weapon, if you will, for Aries. The in esoteric astrology, Mercury is considered like the intuitive mind, which is really the most important and highest weapon, sharpest weapon for Aries, because Aries needs its sword. Like it's literally ruled by Mars. Like it's a fighter. And Aries reminds us that we need to take a stand sometimes, and there's always something that's going to get us heated. There's anger is an emotion that I think has been totally like subdued and downplayed in our society. And Aries reminds us that sometimes you have to get angry to know you need to make a change about something. Aries is that energy. What about me? It really teaches us to create boundaries, and anger can point us to where we are not respecting our own boundaries. So, um, some of us are feeling really fed up. Some of us are feeling angry. It might be within a job or relationship. I've been speaking to people in astrology sessions that are like rage quitting their job, or updating their resume in fury because they're like, I can't do this anymore. I've just had it, and they want to do something different. So, if you think of a ram, they're known for butting heads. They approach things head on, and it's really like having confidence to believe in yourself to be successful in perhaps a new endeavor, a new path, or just doing things differently. These are more extreme cases or situations, but some people are leaving abusive relationships, or I've seen some people just like they're ready to make changes that they knew they needed to make for years, but it's like, oh yeah, now it feels natural to do it. It's this organic momentum. Um, the last time the North Node was in Aries was 2006. So if you think back to that time, if there's any sort of theme you can recall, of course, depending on your age, that might be coming up again. It might be resurfacing, or it might just be a similar but kind of different theme. Um, I know for me personally, Aries is my third house, and I was graduating high school. And now I am actually going back to school. So third house is learning, education. It's also speaking in the internet. So, you know, third house is kind of like the junk drawer. I've heard that before in astrology. And there's a lot of different things that can be going on if you have an Aries third house. But, some people, if they have an Aries seventh house, they might be starting a new relationship, or they might be ready to do things differently in their relationship. Maybe they're starting therapy, or maybe they've just had it and they're like, this, I can't, we can't harmonize. Like it's time to go our separate ways. So, um, I love that Venus has newly entered Aries. She is teaching us that we can build our strength. We can love ourselves enough to build new muscle, right? And so we can like we can test ourselves in new ways. And I think that's the raw, fresh, like primal energy of Aries that's just really emerging. Um, and it's such an expressive energy that we might even be surprised by our own ways of behaving lately, like the last couple of weeks and even in the month to come. Eclipse energy extends beyond just the day that it happens, but this is the moment of totality, which depending on where you are in, in the world, this will be more on the eastern side of the world and like going through Mexico and kind of like the eastern part of the United States, you might be able to see the full totality of it. Um, and I know that even if you're not in that pathway, you'll still be able to see like maybe some crescents on the ground, and you'll be able to see the sun be blacked out to a certain degree, but the path of totality is like it will literally be dark and the animals go wild. It's a very profound thing to witness. And I know the one in 2017, I was able to see that with the glasses. And I'm someone who wants to see that stuff. I've heard of people saying, I don't think we should see it. Some people want to stay in, or they respect the eclipse in a different way, or maybe have a personal ritual around it. I think whatever feels appropriate for you. I don't recommend looking at the eclipse without those glasses, but it is definitely a very sacred experience. I mean, for as long as we've been tracking these celestial movements and events, eclipses have been known to really bring us into a very heightened state. Our senses are heightened. We can feel something happening and occurring within us, right? The sun represents our consciousness, the moon is our subconscious. And when we're experiencing this like break in light, and then the revelation, or I believe eclipses like reveal blind spots for us in our psyche, we might feel compelled or moved to act differently or do something differently, or something lands in our psyche usually. And it also depends on, like, if you're a cardinal sign, cardinal signs are going to feel this really intensely. If you have planets at or around 19 degrees, you'll be heavily activated. So some eclipses affect people so much more than others. And that, of course, is all relative. Um, if you have planets, at those um, in or around 19 degrees. And I also want to like clarify that eclipses are not bad. Like they're not evil. There's always going to be like nefarious energies that are trying to work their way through these celestial events. I know there's people that are into dark magic, and that's just kind of what the spectrum is on this earthly experience, right? There's always going to be the light and the dark, and I believe you can use this energy to empower yourself. I think there's so much knowledge in, or so much power in knowledge, like just knowing where Aries is in your chart and understanding like the intensity of this initiation can really help you ground into this so you don't get tossed around in this eclipse energy. Like, what is happening? And if you're not sensitive to, these energies, well, I imagine you wouldn't be like watching this video. But yeah, there are people who are less sensitive to cosmic events, and that's okay too. But there's this eclipse feels like a boiling point. I'm just kind of like looking over my notes, and I had wrote, it's a boiling point. It feels like a choice point. Something needs to change. Something has come to a head. Aries rules the head. We might feel like actually a lot of activity in our head. Um, there's just something we want to break out of, right? Or breaking out of shackles, or breaking out of our restraints. And we're really looking at where we've been maybe too nice or too suppressed, or, playing in the realm of just like not including ourselves, or living in a way that isn't true to who we are. And it's like, oh, I actually can't do this anymore. It's really, that's what I mean, where it's like a boiling point. So, Aries is like, it reminds us about our desires, our wants, our needs. It's like, I want this, I deserve this, I deserve this type of relationship. I want, to put more time towards exercise, or, it's like all these things about having a human experience. I think it's really, what's the word? It's really brought to light, especially in fire signs. Fire signs are always teaching us about self-expression and courage and, doing what we want, and having the confidence to do it, having the confidence to confront something maybe that's just been eating you alive, whether it's a conversation you need to have with a friend or a boss or a family member, something that you've been holding in, and I know that there can be some hurt feelings. I know people are going to be saying things that they maybe regret through this energy, but it's like there's so many of us who just can't keep suppressing anymore. So I also feel like I keep receiving this image of like a dragon waking up, like a sleeping dragon, which the North Node is considered Rahu in astrology. It's like the head of the dragon. And so we're moving into, and the energy that we're like eating, and then the energy that we're basically like excreting is like the tail of the dragon during this passage, which is like Libra. And it doesn't mean that once like we're just like dropping all the Libra energy, we're we're integrating, but we're really moving into Libra, I'm sorry, Aries energy right now. So like confrontation, for example, that's going to be a huge theme with this eclipse, and it has been since Aries season started. But you you don't have to be combative or argumentative. It's like you can use that grace from Libra. You can use um the nervousness, or maybe even if you feel scared, like, and you can communicate your feelings, literally holding your heart, like, I'm nervous to, tell you this, or I'm actually really scared to tell you this, but when you do this, it hurts my feelings, or, I feel this type of way. Aries energy is the remedy for Libra, and Libra energy is the remedy for Aries. And so the opposite signs are just what each other needs to feel balanced and harmonized. And so Aries is all about the self, and Libra is about the other. Um, and so Aries is basically saying you need to you need to fight for balance. You need to fight for more, because there's really no such thing as perfect balance. But Aries is, we're really shaking up the scales so we can like recalibrate and rebalance the energy, which Libra loves. We're coming to a new elevated sense of energy, but it's going to take a little bit of it's going to take a little bit of like rocking the boat, right? So there's an energy of confronting fears here, right? And getting taking up space. That's a huge theme here with Aries, right? Having the courage to take up space and, maybe share something that's been on your mind, communicate your needs. And you can do these things with love, right? You can do these things with grace. You can call in that Libra energy and really try to, breathe love into the intensity of what you need to share, or the direction you need to move into. So, um, what else? I think that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to say. And yeah, if you're feeling just overall like really messy or chaotic in your own mental headspace, like you're not crazy. Eclipses affect all of us pretty different, I mean, differently and also similarly. You know, the thing about eclipses is we can just feel like we're not grounded. We can because we're moving through such a potent time where I mean, so much of our energetic component is like affected by these events. I mean, we have free will, so we're able to navigate these passages the best we can and like stay in our lane or stay focused in our own direction. Like that's why I actually use astrology because it helps me stay connected to my personal path. And at the same time, it's important to know that like even though eclipses are fated events, you still are in charge of how that plays out to a degree. So, you know, some people will receive some sort of information, right? Because this is a very mercurial passage. And it's like your, you know, the saying of like your response, that's what you can control. And so, yeah, we are feeling highly reactive and navigating the space the best we can. Um, Something that's important to really note about this eclipse is that it is kairotic. So kairotic, I know that sounds funny, but Chiron is in it literally conjunct the sun and the moon at this epic new beginning. So what does that mean? You know, Chiron looks like a key. It is our key to spiritual bliss and ecstasy on the earth plane. He's the wounded healer. Okay, so Chiron in Aries is a big deal. We're in Chiron in Aries is about healing the self. You know, Chiron in mythology depicts someone who was a product of rape and a product of abandonment. And he ends up becoming one of the greatest mentors and astrologers of all time. And Chiron represents in our chart the part of us that is incredibly tender, that we may feel wounded. Um, Chiron orbits between Saturn and Uranus. His orbit is kind of unusual. And so he's all about like bridging structure and liberation. And so, you know, once we start bringing our gift forward and also liberating ourselves from the pain, we can then actually create an offering in this life that helps others heal in a in their own way. So you basically can present like a survival template to other people and help them on their path in the very thing that you're working on healing. So the thing about Chiron and Aries is like it's all about self-acceptance, radical self-acceptance and knowing who you are. And even if that doesn't feel clear, like if you're not clear on like your identity, you know, that's okay. This is really about like having the courage to love yourself as you are and where you are on your path. You know, Chiron in Aries is about, it's like you can't really move forward without self-love, you know, as cheesy as it sounds. There's so much progress to be made through this eclipse and through this year. I feel like there's going to be a huge wave of healing that really kind of affects us all. And, you know, we need it. We're all really hard on ourselves. We all judge ourselves and criticize ourselves. And a Chiron and Aries is like, we've had enough and we need to kind of like take a step back from the self-harm, basically, and self-deprecation. So I love I love the Chiron effect here and also Venus and Aries bringing in so much strength to love ourselves and to really find the parts of ourselves that, you know, keep us like feeling, you know, like we can move forward, we have resilience and, you know, not that we don't stop to process, but that we have the strength to keep going, you know, and we're courageous. It's important to be it's important to know that we are truly like the heroes of our own story. And there's a lot of that energy that's like trickling through. So anything else I wanted to say about this eclipse? Check out the time wherever you are. I know that it's going to be different around the world. It's around 11:22 in Pacific Standard Time. But yeah, if you wanted to look at where this eclipse is happening in your chart, it's at 19 degrees, and that is the Sabian symbol of overcoming a crisis. So that is a really interesting, um, like the symbology with 19-degree Aries is all about overcoming crises. I think about in Aries, we think about in nature how there's all these like fresh buds, and then well, especially the northern hemisphere. And it's like Aries is, even though it's incredibly like fearless, there is a tenderness and a sensitivity to it because, you know, if you think of a seed sprouting like through its breaking ground, it doesn't know what's on the other side of that ground. Like it just goes and it's confident enough to bloom and to bloom its own way. And so we see a lot of like that's what I mean by how astrology is like the archetypes are in nature. They're in our lived experience. They're not just constellations in the sky. And so that reflection just feels like really important. Anyways, look to your chart wherever you have Aries, and you will see that is really where the new beginning is kicking off. And, you can go through the houses and kind of see like, oh, if that's your first house, you might be going through like a really big initiation around your identity. Like you might feel like you're literally birthing a new sense of self, and that can feel really intense. And, like, wow, I don't identify with who I was like a couple of years ago. And, we, with this South Node in Libra, there's a lot of mirror work happening here. Like we're really seeing ourselves reflected back to us and seeing the growth progress that we've made by our own personal matrix that we've grounded into. It's like, these are my friends, this is my relationship, or this is the work I do. And when you start to feel like a stranger to your own environment and your surroundings, you're going like through a huge level up usually. Or maybe it's time to consider, shifting some things around. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. It's totally normal if you're feeling like tired, wired, or anxious, or just really triggered, or, kind of like I like the word raw. Like it's just like feeling raw and tender. And there's it's hard to relax during Aries energy, but if you can, creating like the Libra polarity, creating a space to retreat to, like making sure your surroundings are beautiful and clean. Maybe you need to like purge and eliminate some items just to like clear space and really, really put it out there to the universe that you're ready to like walk this path and you're just clearing the way. And that's a great way to work with this. People and astrologers are really adamant about like you don't need to do any like rituals or things like that around eclipses. I personally don't. I really like to sit and just feel what comes up and see and feel kind of how this is like emerging in my part of the chart. And that's how I like to work with the energy. I definitely like to journal. I like to create space to just sit and like move through and not schedule too much or, have any plans. I usually don't make plans around eclipses because I feel really wiped out during those days leading up to and after, because our systems are just processing a lot of energy. And so I know not everyone can like take off work, but if you can create spaces of rest and retreat, that would probably do your body and spirit some good. So I hope you found this video helpful and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.